Welcome back to Lena's Romantasy Collection, where the alphas are monolithic, the heroines never back down, and the fated mate bond is absolute. Quick question for the pack before we dive into today's chaos. Where are you listening from right now? Let me know in the comments and drop a chicken emoji if your pet is currently judging your audiobook choices, or if you think Nugget is the real alpha of this story. Today, we have a wild one. It's funny, it's high stakes, and it involves a very chaotic landscape architect crashing the wrong royal wedding. But before we start, if you want to support the channel and get early access to full series like this one, hit that join button down below. It helps us keep the lights on, the art consistent, and the stories coming. Now, take a deep breath. The beetle is rattling. The king is waiting, and the bride is furious. Let's read. Chapter 1. The GPS. On Mina Hart's phone wasn't just glitching, it was having a digital seizure. Recalculating, the robotic voice droned, sounding smug. Make a U-turn. Proceed to the route. I can't make a U-turn, you demonic device. It's a one-way street, Mina shouted, gripping the steering wheel of Clementine, her vintage light blue 1974 Volkswagen Beetle. The car rattled violently as it idled, a mechanical cough that vibrated through her bones. She was late. Specifically, she was 20 minutes late to stop her lying, cheating nematode of an ex-boyfriend, Dave, from ruining another woman's life. Beside her, on the passenger seat, sat the evidence box, a cardboard archive of printed screenshots, bank statements, and humiliating love letters. Perched atop the box in a mesh carrier was Nugget, her silky chicken, who clucked with judgmental rhythm. "Hold on, Nugget," Mina muttered, swerving around a pothole. "We're going to save the day, or at least ruin Dave's." She saw the spire of a church looming ahead. St. Peter's, the GPS had said. It looked bigger than she remembered, gothic and imposing, with stained glass that were quite exorbitant in its own right. But adrenaline had narrowed her vision to a singular point: the doors. Mina slammed the brakes. Clementine screeched to a halt in the reserved for officiant spot. She killed the engine, grabbed the evidence box, and kicked the passenger door. It stuck. She kicked it again, harder, until it popped open with a metallic groan. "Let's go!" She grabbed the carrier and the box, sprinting up the stone steps. Inside the cathedral, the air was thick with the scent of expensive lilies and suffocating silence. The heavy oak doors were formidable, requiring her to put her shoulder into the wood and shove. They flew open with a thunderous boom that echoed into the vaulted ceiling. Mina stumbled inside, hair wild, box raised high like a weapon. "Stop!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Don't marry him! He's a liar, and he stole my Netflix password!" The silence that followed was absolute. Visceral. Mina blinked, her chest heaving. She looked around. This wasn't a tacky chapel with fake flowers. This was regal. The pews were filled with people in severe, dark suits and terrified expressions. Along the walls stood men in tactical gear, the Iron Guard, hands hovering over weapons, their eyes darting to the king, waiting for the signal to strike that never came. And at the altar, that wasn't Dave. Dave was 5'9" on a good day and wore ill-fitting khakis. The man standing at the altar was a titan. At least 6'5", with shoulders that looked like they could carry a suspension bridge. He wore a tuxedo that strained against his frame and, inexplicably, a massive, ancient broadsword strapped to his hip. His hair was dark, cropped short, and his face was a landscape of exhaustion, marked by a jagged scar through his left eyebrow. He stared at her. His eyes were amber, piercing, and rimmed with red. Mina froze. "Oh," she whispered, the sound carrying in the dead silence. "Wrong church. My bad. Carry on." She turned to flee. "Wait." The voice wasn't loud, but it vibrated through the floorboards, a deep baritone that hit Mina like a physical blow to the stomach. The groom wasn't looking at the terrified bride beside him. He was looking at Mina. He inhaled sharply, his nostrils flaring. Mina smelled it too. A sudden wave of burnt oak and the sharp, clean scent of a looming storm. It collided with her own scent of wild raspberries and cedar, creating a sensory collision that made her knees weak. The groom's hand twitched toward the sword hilt. The tension in his shoulders, which had been pulled tight as a bowstring, suddenly snapped. He looked at the chaos she had brought, the chicken, the box, the shouting, and the amber fire in his eyes cooled into something else. Amusement. He stepped off the dais, leaving the bride standing there with her mouth open. "Finally!" he said, his rusty laugh breaking the tension like shattered glass. Chapter 2. The word hung in the air, heavy and confusing. "Finally?" "Seize him!" a voice screeched from the front row. An elderly man in velvet robes, High Elder Cassius, pointed a shaking finger at the groom. "He is compromised. The king is compromised." King? Mina's brain short-circuited. The iron guard along the walls hesitated. Their discipline warred with the sudden command. That split-second hesitation was the only chance they had. A man standing next to the groom, the best man presumably, stepped forward. He had a mischievous glint in his eye. "Whoops," he said deadpan. He leaned his shoulder into the massive 20-foot floral archway framing the aisle. With a grunt of effort, he tipped it. The structure, heavy with water-soaked oasis foam and thousands of white roses, crashed down into the center aisle with a deafening cacophony of breaking wood and squashed petals. It effectively created a wall between the altar and the guests. "Run!" the best man roared. The groom didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, covering the distance between the altar and the door in 3 long strides. He grabbed Mina's free hand. His grip was calloused and warm, sending a jolt of electricity up her arm, and yanked her toward the exit. "Hey, my box!" Mina yelled, clutching the evidence box to her chest with her other arm. "Move, woman!" he growled, dragging her out into the sunlight. They burst onto the steps. The iron guard was shouting inside, scrambling to climb over the fallen floral barricade. "Where is your vehicle?" the groom demanded, scanning the lot filled with armored SUVs. "The blue one! The Beetle!" Mina pointed to Clementine. The giant man stopped. He looked at the tiny, light blue, rusted Volkswagen. Then he looked at his own massive frame. "You cannot be serious." "It has great gas mileage! Get in!" Mina scrambled into the driver's seat. The groom shoved himself into the passenger side. It was a comedy of physics. His knees hit the dashboard immediately. The ancient coronation sword strapped to his hip clattered against the gear shift, jamming it into neutral. "The sword! Move the sword!" Mina screamed, turning the key. The engine coughed. "Rrrr, put, put, put." "It doesn't detach easily," he snarled, wrestling with the leather belt. He finally unbuckled it, shoving the heavy scabbard down between his legs, the pommel resting near his chin. "Start the damn car!" "I'm trying! She's sensitive!" Mina slammed her foot on the gas. The heavy oak doors of the cathedral burst open. 10 men in tactical gear poured out, weapons drawn. "There!" one of them shouted. Clementine roared to life with a triumphant rattle. Mina threw it into first gear, causing the sword to jab the groom in the ribs. He grunted, but didn't complain. "Go!" he commanded. Mina peeled out of the parking lot, the little blue car screeching as she took the corner on 2 wheels. Behind them, the roar of armored engines ignited. "Who are you?" Mina yelled over the rattle of the engine. "And why are the police chasing us?" The man looked at the side mirror, his expression grim. "That isn't the police. Drive fast or your little chicken becomes a nugget." Nugget, sensing the tension, let out a loud, indignant squawk from the back seat. Chapter 3. "Left! Go left!" the groom barked. "I can't go left, that's a sidewalk," Mina argued, swerving right onto the main boulevard. "It was a tactical option. It was a pedestrian hazard." Behind them, 3 black armored SUVs were weaving through traffic, their grille lights flashing red and blue. They were closing the gap. Clementine was trying her best, her little engine screaming as Mina pushed her past 60 miles per hour. "They're faster than us," Mina said, panic rising in her throat like bile. "They're going to ram us." The groom twisted in the cramped seat, looking out the rear window. "They won't ram us yet. They want me alive. You, however, are expendable." "Wow, charming. Thanks for the update." Mina gripped the wheel until her knuckles turned white. "Any other fun facts?" "If they box us in, they will shoot your tires. We need to lose them. Get off the pavement." "What?" "Off-road. The Whispering Pines Forest entrance is half a mile up. Take it." "Are you insane? This is a vintage vehicle. She has no suspension." "Take the turn." His voice dropped into a register that wasn't entirely human. A low, commanding growl that made Mina's hindbrain scream, "Obey." She yanked the wheel. Clementine hopped the curb, decimated a perfectly manicured hedge, and plunged onto the dirt service road leading into the dense forestry reserve. The impact was so violent the dashboard hula girl finally snapped at the waist, her plastic grass skirt fluttering into the footwell as the car bottomed out. The world became a blur of green and brown. The car bounced violently. The groom's head hit the roof. "Oof." "I told you!" Mina yelled. The armored SUVs followed, their heavy chassis groaning as they hit the dirt. But as the trail narrowed, the dense pine trees pressed in closer. "Keep going," the groom ordered, bracing his hands against the dashboard. "The trees!" Mina saw it. 2 massive pines stood like sentinels on either side of the path. The gap was narrow, maybe 6 feet. "We won't fit!" "We will. They won't." Mina closed her eyes for a split second and gunned it. Clementine shot through the gap, side mirrors scraping pine bark with a screech that set Mina's teeth on edge. They popped through to the other side. Behind them came a sickening crunch. Mina checked the rearview mirror. The lead SUV had tried to follow and wedged itself tight between the trees, metal crumpling like foil. The other SUV skidded to a halt behind it, blocked. "Ha!" Mina screamed, hysterical laughter bubbling up. "Take that, you gas-guzzling monsters!" The groom didn't laugh. He slumped back against the seat, exhaling a breath he seemed to have been holding for days. He reached up and loosened his tie, ripping the silk fabric away from his throat as if it were strangling him. "Keep driving," he murmured, his voice rough with fatigue. "Don't stop until we hit the county line." Mina looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since the church. He was terrifyingly large in the small space, smelling of danger and rain. But his hand was resting on the dashboard, fingers trembling slightly. "Okay," she whispered. "County line. Got it." Chapter 4. 40 miles later, Clementine was running on fumes and hope. Mina pulled into a dilapidated gas station that looked like the setting for a horror movie. The neon sign buzzed ominously, GS and Saks. "I need gas," Mina said, killing the engine. Her hands were shaking. and I need answers. Who are you? Drug lord? Mafia hitman? Politician? The man opened his door, kicking it twice with practiced ease. He was a quick learner, and unfolded his massive frame from the vehicle. He stretched, bones cracking audibly. He grabbed the heavy sword and shoved it under the passenger seat, covering it with a fast food wrapper. "Stay here," he said, walking toward the bathroom. "Excuse me? I asked a question!" Mina yelled at his back. He ignored her. She huffed, grabbing her phone. No signal. She walked toward the pumps, holding her phone up like Simba on Pride Rock until, ping, 1 bar of LTE. Her screen flooded with notifications. Text messages from her mom, missed calls from her boss, and a news alert from the Daily Howl, a local tabloid she usually ignored. Breaking! Newly crowned King Ronan Vesper flees own wedding. Mina frowned. King. She clicked the link. A photo loaded. It was blurry, taken from a distance, but the face was unmistakable. The scar, the amber eyes, the exhausted scowl. King Ronan Vesper of the Silver Claw Pack, sworn in only 48 hours ago following the death of his father, has vanished. Mina's blood ran cold. She wasn't driving a mobster. She was driving a werewolf monarch, a supernatural creature that could rip her throat out with his teeth. She looked at the bathroom door. It was opening. Mina didn't think. She bolted for the driver's side. She fumbled with the keys, dropped them, cursed, and snatched them up. She jammed the key into the ignition. A hand, large, warm, and immovable, slammed onto the hood of the car. Mina screamed. Ronan stood there, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing thick forearms corded with muscle. He looked unimpressed. "Going somewhere?" he asked. "You're a wolf!" Mina squeaked. "You're the king of the wolves! I saw the news!" "I am," he said simply. "And you are Mina Hart, age 24, landscape architect, currently defaulting on a loan of $42,000. Mina blinked. "How do you know that?" He held up a wallet. Her wallet. "You left this on the seat." "Give it back!" "I will," he said, leaning down so they were eye level. His amber eyes were hypnotic. "I will give it back, and I will pay off that $42,000 in cash today." Mina stopped reaching. "What?" "I needed transport," Ronan said, his voice low and urgent. "I cannot use my accounts. They are tracking them. I cannot use my cars. I need a ghost. I need Clementine." "You want to hire me?" "I want to hire your anonymity. Drive me to a safe zone north of the city. Keep me hidden for 5 days. In exchange, I clear your debt." Mina bit her lip. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was a felony kidnapping charge waiting to happen. "And Dave," she said suddenly. Ronan tilted his head. "The nematode? If I do this, you have to help me destroy him. Legally, or socially. I want him to regret the day he was born." Ronan's lips twitched. A ghost of a smile touched his face, transforming him from terrifying to devastatingly handsome. "Done," the king said. "Get in the car, Mina. We have a wedding to crash." Chapter 5. St. Peter's Chapel was a stark, beige contrast to the Gothic opulence of the Royal Cathedral. It had vinyl siding, a plastic marquee that read, "Congrats, Dave and Linda," and a parking lot full of sensible sedans. Mina parked Clementine in the fire lane, the little light blue Beetle looking like a bruised berry among the gray cars. The side mirror, bent inward from its collision with the pine tree, reflected her frantic expression. "You are not going in there," Ronan stated, his voice flat. He was currently folded into the passenger seat like expensive origami, his knees pressed against the glove box. The hilt of the coronation sword was jammed between the center tunnel and his thigh, the leather scabbard digging into the floor mat. "I have to," Mina said, grabbing the evidence box from the back seat. Nugget clucked softly from his carrier, seemingly sensing the violence in the air. "Dave told everyone I was emotionally unstable and that I moved to Peru. I need to set the record straight. It's about accountability." Ronan sighed, a sound that rumbled deep in his chest. "Fine, but be quick. Every minute we stay stationary is a minute the iron guard closes in." He kicked the stuck passenger door twice, thud, thud, and shoved it open. He stepped out, stretching to his full 6'5" height. The tuxedo, now minus the tie and with the top buttons undone, made him look like a brawler who had just left a high-stakes poker game. "You're coming?" Mina asked, blinking. "I am your transport security," Ronan said, his amber eyes scanning the perimeter. "And I have a low tolerance for Daves." They marched to the chapel doors. Mina burst through them, channeling the same energy she had at the cathedral, though the stakes felt significantly lower. "Stop the wedding!" she yelled, marching down the short, carpeted aisle. The guests, mostly co-workers from the accounting firm, gasped. Dave stood at the altar, looking pale and doughy in a tan suit. His bride, Linda, looked confused. "Mina?" Dave squeaked. You're supposed to be in Peru." "I'm not in Peru, Dave." Mina slammed the box onto the front pew. "I'm in Silver Creek, and these are the receipts from the credit cards you opened in my name to buy your crypto investments." "Security!" Dave yelled, his voice cracking. "Someone get her out of here! She's crazy!" Two of Dave's groomsmen stepped forward, looking unsure. Then, Ronan stepped into the doorway. He didn't yell. He didn't have to. He simply filled the space, a dark, looming silhouette against the afternoon sun. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He walked down the aisle, his heavy dress shoes clicking ominously on the linoleum. He stopped behind Mina and glared at Dave. The groomsmen sat back down immediately. Who is that?" Dave whispered, trembling. Ronan looked Dave up and down, his lip curling in a sneer that was both elegant and terrifying. "You are the man who chose fraud over this woman?" Dave stammered. She... Pathetic," Ronan said. The word was quiet, but it hit the room like a gavel. He turned to Mina. "Are we finished here? The air in this establishment smells of desperation and cheap cologne." Mina looked at Dave, sweating, small and terrified. The anger drained out of her, replaced by a sudden, brilliant clarity. "Yeah," she said, smoothing her shirt. "We're done. Good luck, Linda. Check your credit score." She turned on her heel. Ronan placed a protective hand on the small of her back, a touch that sent a jolt of heat straight through her spine, and guided her out. As the doors swung shut behind them, Mina let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 2 years. "Feel better?" Ronan asked, guiding her back to the battered beetle. "Immensely," Mina grinned. "Now, let's get you to safety, Your Majesty." Chapter 6. 40 minutes later, the adrenaline had faded, leaving a heavy silence in the car. They pulled into the parking lot of a Tech-and-Go convenience store on the outskirts of the city. "Smartphones," Ronan commanded, holding out his hand. Mina hesitated, clutching her device. "My whole life is in here. My portfolio, my photos." "And a GPS tracker that is currently broadcasting our location to the council," Ronan said. Do you want your photos, or do you want to live? Mina groaned but handed it over. Ronan took her phone and his own sleek royal issue device. He walked to a metal trash can near the gas pumps, dropped them in, and then, with a casual violence that made Mina jump, picked up a heavy rock and smashed them until they were nothing but glass and plastic shards. That was therapeutic, he muttered, dusting off his hands. They went inside. The clerk, a teenager popping gum, didn't look up from his magazine. "We need 2 burner phones," Ronan said, placing a crisp $100 bill on the counter. "Prepaid, cash only." "Aisle 4, the kid mumbled. While Ronan selected the phones, Mina raided the snack aisle. Her stomach was growling ferociously. She grabbed a bag of beef jerky, a bottle of water, and, after checking the pet section, a container of dried mealworms. "For the chicken?" Ronan asked, appearing behind her. He held up 2 cheap plastic flip phones. "Nugget has dietary needs," Mina said defensively, "and you look like you're about to pass out. When was the last time you ate?" "The coronation feast," Ronan admitted, eyeing the beef jerky. 2 days ago." Mina's eyes widened. 2 days? And you're healing from, well, nothing visible, but stress burns calories too. She threw 3 more bags of jerky into the pile. They paid and hurried back to Clementine. Once inside, Ronan tore open a bag of jerky and devoured half of it in one bite. He looked like a starving wolf disguised as a gentleman. "Okay," he said, swallowing. He punched a number into his new flip phone. "Calling Keon." He put it on speaker. It rang twice. "Who is this?" a hushed voice answered. "The groom who got away," Ronan said. "Ronan!" Keon's voice dropped to a whisper. "Thank the moon. Are you safe?" "For now, I'm with the civilian. What is the situation at the castle?" "Chaos," Keon reported. "Cassius is spinning this. He's claiming you've suffered a psychotic break due to the pressure of the crown. He's calling for an emergency council vote on Friday to install a regent." Ronan's jaw tightened. "He wants to take the throne." "Yes. If you aren't back by the Winter Solstice Gala on Friday to prove you're sane, they'll vote you out. You have until the Winter Solstice Gala this Friday. That gives you less than 72 hours. "I'll be there," Ronan vowed. "Keep the Crimson Shield at the border. If they move in now, it's a civil war. I need to handle this politically." "Understood. Stay hidden. They have trackers everywhere." The line clicked dead. Ronan looked at Mina. The exhaustion in his eyes was heavier now, weighted by betrayal. "Friday," Mina said softly. "Where do we go until Friday?" Ronan looked at the map on his lap. "Somewhere with no cameras, no people, and thick walls." "I know a place," Mina said, starting the rattling engine. "But we're going to need firewood." Chapter 7. The drive to Grandma's cabin took 3 hours. The paved roads gave way to gravel, and the gravel gave way to a dirt track that tested every bolt in Clementine's chassis. By the time they arrived, the sun had set. The cabin was a small A-frame structure tucked deep into the woods, covered in a blanket of pine needles and dust. It looked abandoned, mostly because Grandma spent her winters in Florida playing bingo. "Charming," Ronan said, unfolding himself from the car. He dragged the coronation sword out with him, the scabbard clanking against his leg. Mina grabbed Nugget's carrier and the tote bag. "It's rustic and free." She unlocked the door. The air inside was stale and freezing. She flipped the light switch. Nothing. "Power's out," she sighed. "Storm must have knocked a line down." "Heating?" Ronan asked, seeing his breath fog in the air. "There's a gas fireplace." Mina pointed to the stone hearth. She walked over and turned the valve. The handle turned loosely, disconnected and dead, offering no sound of flowing fuel. "Gas hasn't been topped off in years," she sighed. "Empty, of course." She turned to the corner of the room where a cast-iron wood stove sat, looking ancient and formidable. "We have to use that. There's a wood pile out back, but the logs are whole. They need to be split." Ronan nodded. He removed his tuxedo jacket, folding it neatly over a dusty armchair. Then he unbuttoned his cufflinks, rolling his white sleeves up to his elbows. The muscles in his forearms shifted like steel cables under his skin. "Do you have an axe?" he asked. "By the shed," Mina squeaked, her voice suddenly an octave higher. She watched from the dusty window as the king of the wolves walked into the moonlight. He found the axe, tested its weight, and set a log on the stump. Thwack! One strike. The log split perfectly in two. He moved with a rhythmic, terrifying efficiency. Thwack! Thwack! He wasn't just chopping wood. He was working out aggression. Every swing was a statement. Mina felt a strange sensation in her chest. Not fear, but a dull, magnetic pull. A hollow ache she hadn't realized was there suddenly felt soothed. She rubbed her sternum, frowning. "Stop staring at the lumberjack king, Mina," she whispered to herself. "He's a client, a very dangerous, very tall client." She turned away to find candles, ignoring the fact that her heart was beating like a trapped bird. Chapter 8. An hour later, the cabin was filled with the flicker of candlelight and the smell of wood smoke. Well, mostly wood smoke. "It is not lighting," Ronan growled. He was crouched in front of the wood stove, his face smudged with soot. He had stuffed the firebox with massive logs, but no kindling. "You're smothering it," Mina said, coming up behind him. "You can't just yell 'ignite' at the wood, Your Majesty. It requires finesse." Ronan rocked back on his heels, looking offended. "I have led armies. I can build a fire." "Clearly not," Mina teased. She knelt beside him. The proximity was dizzying. He smelled of the cold night air and that unique scent of storm. She rearranged the wood, creating a small pyramid of dry leaves and twigs she'd brought in. She lit a match. The flame caught instantly, feeding on the oxygen she'd allowed in. "Airflow," she said, closing the grate. "Physics." Ronan watched her, his amber eyes tracking the movement of her hands. "You are capable," he murmured. It sounded like a revelation. "I'm a landscape architect," Mina said, standing up and wiping ash on her jeans. "I work with dirt and plants. I'm not a delicate flower, Ronan." "No," he agreed, standing up. He towered over her, the small room suddenly feeling intimate. "You are not." The moment stretched, thick and heavy, until a loud cluck broke the silence. Nugget had escaped his carrier. The white, silky chicken strutted across the floor, wearing his pearl necklace with dignity. He stopped at Ronan's discarded tuxedo jacket, pecked at the shiny gold signet ring resting on the arm of the chair, grabbed it in his beak, and darted under the sofa. "Hey!" Ronan lunged. "That ring is 500 years old. Nugget, drop it!" Mina dove for the sofa. The chicken refused to negotiate. 10 minutes later, they were sitting on the rug eating cold canned soup. Mina hadn't heated it enough, while Nugget sat victoriously on top of the refrigerator with the ring. Ronan took a spoonful of lukewarm tomato soup. He grimaced. "Is this food?" "It's nutrients," Mina said. "Eat up. You need the calories." Ronan ate it. All of it. He scraped the bowl clean. "It is salty," he assessed, "but efficient." He looked at Mina, his expression softening. "Thank you for the shelter and the sodium." Mina smiled, and for the first time she saw the man beneath the crown. He looked young, tired, and desperately lonely. "You're welcome," she said softly. Chapter 9. The next morning, the sun filtered through the dusty windows, illuminating floating motes of dust. Mina woke up on the couch, stiff and cold. Ronan was asleep in the armchair, the coronation sword leaning against his knee, his hand resting on the hilt, even in sleep. He woke instantly when she moved, his eyes snapping open, no grogginess, just instant alertness. "Morning," Mina croaked. "We have a problem," Ronan said, checking his burner phone. Keon texted. "The council is moving fast. They are claiming my flight was proof of instability due to the lack of a mate. They say a king without a queen is volatile." Mina rubbed her face. "So they want to replace you because you're single?" "Essentially. They want to force the regent vote." Ronan stood up, pacing the small room. The floorboards creaked under his weight. "I need to stall them. I need to prove I am not unstable. I need a loophole." He stopped pacing. He looked at Mina. "What?" Mina asked, backing up. "I don't like that look." "There is an obscure precedent," Ronan lied smoothly. "The law of sanctuary. If an unmated female interrupts a royal union and the alpha accepts her departure with him, they are legally bound for 30 days to assess compatibility. The council cannot remove me if I am in a compatibility trial." Mina stared at him. "You made that up." "I did," Ronan admitted, a corner of his mouth quirking up. "But they don't know that. The Wolf Law archives are thousands of pages long. By the time they verify it doesn't exist, it will be Friday." "So you want to fake date me?" "I want to fake mate you, legally speaking." Mina laughed, a hysterical sound. "Okay, sure, why not? I'm already an accessory to kidnapping. Let's add fraud." "We need to record a video," Ronan said. "A declaration, and we need to upload it. Is there internet here?" "No," Mina said. "We have to go into town. There's a coffee shop with Wi-Fi about 10 miles east." They packed quickly. Mina grabbed the tote bag. Ronan retrieved his ring, which Nugget had dropped near the fridge. They piled back into Clementine. The drive to town was tense. When they reached the Daily Grind coffee shop, they parked in the back alley. Ronan held up the burner phone. "Look regal," he instructed. "I'm wearing a flannel shirt covered in chicken dander," Mina deadpanned. "Perfect," Ronan said. He hit record. He stared into the camera, his face shifting into the alpha mask, cold, authoritative, terrifying. "This is King Ronan Vesper," he intoned deeply. "I have not fled. I have exercised my right under the law of sanctuary. The woman, Mina Hart, objected. I accepted. We are now in the 30-day compatibility trial. Any attempt to interfere with this trial is an act of treason against the crown. I will see the council on Friday." He ended the video. "Send it to Keon," he said, handing the phone to Mina. "He will leak it to the press." Mina hit send. The progress bar spun. 99%. Sent. She looked at Ronan. "You're a good liar." "I'm a politician," Ronan corrected, though he looked distasteful. "Now let's go. We have a bounty on our heads, and I have a feeling Cassius won't take this lying down." As they drove away, Mina's phone, the burner, buzzed. It was a text from Keon. "It's live, and it's viral. Hashtag the king and the objector. You two are trending." Mina groaned. "Great, now I'm famous." "Better famous than dead," Ronan said, staring out the window at the passing trees. But his hand drifted toward hers on the gear shift, hovering just inches away, as if seeking the warmth of the only real thing in his life. Chapter 10. High Elder Cassius did not scream. Screaming was for the weak. Instead, he stared at the tablet on his mahogany desk with a silence that was far more terrifying. On the screen, the viral video played on a loop. King Ronan, disheveled, fierce, and undeniably royal, declared the law of sanctuary. "It's a lie," Cassius whispered, his voice like dry leaves scraping over stone. "There is no such law. I wrote the damn Constitution." "The public doesn't know that," his assistant, a nervous beta named Felix, stammered. "The hashtag the king and the objector is trending globally. The pack is charmed. They think it's romantic. If you arrest him now, you'll look like a tyrant interrupting a sacred rite." Cassius swiped the tablet off the desk. It shattered against the marble fireplace. "I cannot arrest him," Cassius hissed, standing up. He walked to the window overlooking the gray skyline of Silver Creek. But if the girl were to disappear? If the king were to be found wandering alone, grieving the tragic loss of his mate due to a car accident? Then he would be truly compromised. Broken. He pulled a burner phone from his drawer. He didn't call the Iron Guard. They were too conspicuous, too bound by protocol. He dialed a number that didn't exist in any directory. "I have a job," Cassius said when the line connected. "A light blue 1974 Volkswagen Beetle. 2 occupants. One is the king. Do not touch him. The other is a human female. She is the target." "Capture or kill?" a distorted voice asked. "Recover the king," Cassius commanded. "Eliminate the distraction. The bounty is 5 million. You have until Friday." Miles away, inside the rattling cabin of Clementine, Mina shivered. "Turn the heat up," she said, rubbing her arms through the flannel shirt she'd borrowed from the cabin. "It is on max," Ronan replied. He was driving now, his knees jammed against the dashboard, steering with one hand while the other rested on the gear shift. The coronation sword, still too long to fit anywhere else, was wedged diagonally across the back seat, draped in Mina's spare flannel and the empty evidence box to hide the glint of steel from passing eyes. It blocked Nugget's view of the road, much to his vocal displeasure. "I have a bad feeling," Mina admitted, checking the side mirror. It was still bent from the pine trees, showing a warped reflection of the empty road behind them. "That video. What if it made things worse? What if Cassius doesn't care about the law?" "Cassius cares about power," Ronan said, his eyes scanning the horizon. "He cannot attack me publicly without losing the pack's support. He has to be subtle." "Subtle?" Mina scoffed. "Like a sledgehammer is subtle." Ronan glanced at her. The tension in his jaw softened slightly. "You are safe, Mina. I sworn an oath. Even a fake oath holds weight for a king." "It's not the oath I'm worried about," Mina muttered, clutching the dashboard as Clementine hit a pothole. "It's the fact that we're driving a bright blue blueberry in a world of wolves." Nugget clucked from the back seat, pecking at the leather scabbard of the sword. "See?" Mina gestured. "Even the chicken is anxious." "The chicken is hungry," Ronan corrected. "Pass me the mealworms. And check the map. We need to find a place to sleep that isn't a freezing cabin." Mina reached for the bag, but her hand froze. In the distance, coming up fast in the rear-view mirror, was a matte black pickup truck. It had no license plates and a grill guard that looked like a row of metal teeth. "Ronan," she whispered. "I see it," he said, his voice dropping into that dangerous, low register. "Hold on." Chapter 11. The impact felt like a bomb going off. The black truck didn't honk. It surged forward, ramming Clementine's rear bumper with a sickening crunch. Mina screamed, dropping the mealworms. The little blue beetle fishtailed violently, tires screeching on the asphalt. "Steer!" Ronan roared, taking his hands off the wheel. What? Take the wheel! Mina grabbed the steering wheel from the passenger side, her heart hammering against her ribs like a jackhammer. What are you doing? They aren't stopping, Ronan growled. He unbuckled his seatbelt. The truck rammed them again, harder this time. The rear window shattered, spraying safety glass over the back seat. Nugget squawked in terror, his carrier tumbling to the floorboard. My chicken! Mina shrieked, fighting to keep the car straight. He's fine! Keep driving! Ronan turned in his seat. He kicked the passenger door. Thud. It stuck. Damn it, he snarled. He kicked it again, putting his alpha strength behind it. The metal groaned, but the latch held. Window! Mina yelled, swerving as the truck tried to clip their side. Ronan didn't hesitate. He rolled down the window and hauled his massive frame out of the moving car. Ronan, don't you dare! Mina screamed. He didn't listen. He climbed out, sitting on the window ledge, the wind whipping his open tuxedo jacket against his ribs like the wings of a dark omen. The truck was right alongside them now. A man in a ski mask was leaning out the passenger window, aiming a shotgun at Mina's tires. Ronan didn't wait for the shot. He launched himself. It was insane. It was physics-defying. He jumped from the moving Beetle to the hood of the truck. He landed with a heavy thud, his boots denting the metal. The driver of the truck panicked, swerving hard. Ronan gripped the edge of the hood, his fingers digging into the steel like claws. He punched the windshield. Smash! The safety glass spiderwebbed instantly. Ronan punched it again, his fist punching through. He grabbed the driver by the collar of his jacket and yanked. Mina watched in the rearview mirror, terrified and awestruck. The truck was zigzagging wildly. Ronan was a blur of violence, fighting two men while clinging to a moving vehicle at 60 miles per hour. She saw the shotgun barrel swing toward him. There was a flash. Ronan jerked back, but he didn't let go. He ripped the gun from the passenger's hands and tossed it onto the road. Then, with a roar that she could hear over the engine, he slammed his fist into the driver's side pillar. The truck swerved violently into the ditch, spinning out in a cloud of dust and gravel. Ronan rolled off the hood before it crashed, tumbling onto the grassy shoulder. Mina slammed on the brakes. Clementine skidded to a halt, smoking and rattling. Ronan! She threw the door open and sprinted back down the road. He was lying in the grass, breathing hard. His white shirt was torn, stained with grease and blood. He sat up, wincing. Did you save the chicken? Mina dropped to her knees beside him, her hands hovering over his shoulder. You idiot! You absolute, reckless, suicidal idiot! Tears pricked her eyes. Are you okay? I'm fine, he grunted, trying to stand. He stumbled. Mina saw the blood soaking through his shirt on the left shoulder. It wasn't a graze. It was a deep gash from where the shotgun blast had clipped him, or maybe from the glass. You're bleeding, she said, her voice trembling. We need to get you off the road, now! Chapter 12. The Sunrise Motel was a flickering neon soar on the side of the highway, but it had a vacancy sign and no cameras. Mina helped Ronan into room 4. He was heavy, leaning on her more than he wanted to admit. His skin was burning up, the alpha metabolism kicking into overdrive to heal the trauma. Sit, she ordered, pushing him onto the lumpy mattress. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner. Mina locked the door and engaged the chain. She ran to the bathroom, grabbing a handful of scratchy towels, then raided her tote bag. What do you have in there? Ronan asked, his voice slurring slightly. He was pale, the adrenaline crash hitting him hard. Art supplies, Mina said, dumping the bag on the bed. Charcoal, pencils, and an X-Acto knife, and a sewing kit for emergency canvas repair. She looked at his shoulder. The shirt was ruined. I need to cut this off. Ronan nodded. Do it. Mina used the X-Acto knife to slice through the expensive fabric of his tuxedo shirt. She peeled it away, revealing a torso that looked like it had been carved from marble. No, not marble. That was a cliché. He looked like he was forged from iron and scar tissue. The wound on his shoulder was ugly, a jagged slice, likely from the shattered windshield, deep enough to need stitches. It was already sluggishly bleeding, his body trying to close it, but the glass shards inside were stopping it. I have to clean it, Mina said, her hand shaking. And I have to take the glass out. This is going to hurt. Ronan looked at her. His eyes were hazy, the amber iris swirling with flecks of gold. I have had worse. Proceed. Mina went to the bathroom and wet a towel with hot water. She came back and gently pressed it to the wound. Ronan flinched. Sorry, Mina pulled back. It's not the pain, Ronan gritted out, his jaw clenched. He looked at her hand resting on his chest. It's the contact. What? The bond, he whispered. It amplifies everything. Your touch, it feels like fire, but good fire. Mina felt her face heat up. She focused on the wound. Okay, well, focus on the bad fire for a second. She used the tweezers from her travel kit to pull out 3 shards of glass. Ronan didn't make a sound, but his hand gripped the bedsheet so hard the fabric tore. Last one, Mina murmured. She pulled the final shard. Blood welled up, fresh and red. I need to stitch it, just a few. She threaded the needle. She wasn't a doctor, but she was a sculptor. She knew how to stitch canvas. Skin wasn't so different, right? She worked quickly, her brow furrowed in concentration. Ronan watched her face the entire time. He wasn't looking at the needle. He was looking at the way she bit her lip, the stray curl falling over her eye, the fierce determination in her hazel gaze. Done, she whispered, tying off the knot. She taped a piece of gauze over it. She sat back, exhausted. You need to eat. Your body is burning up trying to fix that. Ronan reached out. His large, rough hand covered hers. The size difference was comical. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, which were still stained with phthalocyanine blue paint. Why? He asked softly. You could have driven away. You could have left me on the road and gone back to your life. Mina looked down at their joined hands. The hollow ache in her chest, the one she'd carried since her parents died, was silent. I don't leave people behind, she said, her voice thick. Not even reckless kings. Ronan squeezed her hand. Thank you, Mina. He closed his eyes, his breathing evening out as the fever of healing took him under. Mina sat there for a long time, listening to the rain start to fall against the window, watching the rise and fall of his chest, terrifyingly aware that she was no longer just his driver. She was his anchor. Chapter 13. The heat radiating off Ronan's body was enough to warp the air in the small motel room. He was thrashing on the lumpy mattress, a sheen of sweat coating his chest, soaking the bandages Mina had applied hours ago. Mina sat in the rickety chair by the window, watching the rain streak the glass. She was exhausted, her eyes gritty, but she couldn't sleep. Every time Ronan groaned, a spike of anxiety, sharp as a tack, drove into her chest. Mina. His voice was a wrecked rasp. Mina was at his side instantly. I'm here, she whispered, placing a hand on his forehead. It was terrifyingly hot. You're burning up. Ronan's eyes snapped open. The amber irises were blown wide, swallowing the whites, glowing with a feral luminescence in the dim light. He gripped her wrist. His strength was formidable, even in this state. "Food," he growled. It wasn't a request. It was a biological imperative. "Need calories." "Right. Metabolism," Mina muttered, prying his fingers off gently. "You're healing a shotgun wound in real time. You need fuel." She grabbed her wallet and the room key. "Don't move. Do not shift. Do not eat the furniture." She sprinted out into the rain. The motel parking lot was desolate, puddles reflecting the flickering neon sign. She found the vending machine near the ice maker. It was a relic from the 90s, humming ominously. Mina didn't have time for selection. She shoved crisp $20 bills into the feeder and started pressing buttons like a pianist playing a chaotic concerto. Honey buns, potato chips, peanut butter crackers, Snickers bars, beef jerky. Armful by armful, she ran back to room 4, dumping the junk food onto the bedspread. Ronan sat up, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. He tore into a package of honey buns with his teeth, devouring the pastry in 2 bites, then a bag of chips, then the jerky. It was terrifying and fascinating to watch, like feeding a shark if the shark liked glazed sugar. "Slow down," Mina said, opening a bottle of water. "You're going to choke." Ronan ignored her, draining the water in one long swallow. He blinked, the feral glow in his eyes receding slightly as the sugar hit his bloodstream. He looked at the pile of wrappers, then at Mina. "I apologize," he murmured, his voice steadier but thick with fatigue. "The healing, it consumes everything." "It's okay," Mina said, sitting on the edge of the bed. She handed him a chocolate bar. "Dessert?" Ronan took it, his fingers brushing hers. He didn't eat it immediately. He leaned back against the headboard, the bandage on his shoulder stark white against his tan skin. The fever had broken, leaving him looking human again, though incredibly weary. "I hate this," he admitted quietly, staring at the ceiling. The hunger, the violence, the constant need to be a weapon. Mina tilted her head. "You're the king. Isn't that the job description?" "It shouldn't be." He turned his head to look at her. "I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to build things, not destroy them. But I was born with the alpha blood. The crown is a boulder on my shoulders I cannot put down." Mina felt a pang of sympathy, a punch to the gut that stole her breath. "So you're just stuck?" "Until now," Ronan said softly. "Crashing that wedding, running away with you. It is the first time in 10 years I have felt like I own my own life." The silence that followed was heavy, filled only by the drumming rain and the quiet rustle of Nugget shifting in his carrier. "Well," Mina said, her voice wavering, "for what it's worth, you're a terrible architect. You tried to fix a fire with 0 airflow." Ronan chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "And you are a chaotic driver. We make a disastrous team." "The worst," Mina agreed, smiling. Chapter 14. The piece lasted exactly 3 hours. Mina had dozed off in the chair. Ronan was asleep on the bed. The room was dark, save for the gap in the curtains where the parking lot lights bled through. Suddenly, lights swept across the ceiling, bright, high beams. Not 1 car, 3. Mina woke with a start. The sound of heavy tires crushing gravel outside was unmistakable. Then, the screech of brakes. Ronan was awake before she could speak. He rolled off the bed, snatching the coronation sword from where it rested against the nightstand. He didn't hiss in pain, though the movement must have pulled at his stitches. He moved to the window, peering through the crack. "Iron Guard?" Mina whispered, grabbing her shoes. "Worse," Ronan said, his tone grim. Mercenaries. They are not wearing crests. Cassius sent a cleanup crew. A heavy fist pounded on the door of the room next to theirs. Room 3. "Open up! Pest control!" a voice shouted. Then the sound of a door being kicked in. A scream followed. "They're going room to room," Mina realized, horror icing her veins. "They're going to kill us." "We cannot fight them," Ronan said rapidly. "There are too many, and I am at half strength. We have to run." "The car?" Mina reached for her keys. "No!" Ronan grabbed her hand, stopping her. "They blocked the exit. If we get in the Beetle, we are trapped in a metal box. We go on foot." Mina looked at the door, then at the back window. "Leave Clementine? With the broken window? It's raining." "Mina," Ronan said, gripping her shoulders. "Car or life? Choose." Mina grit her teeth. "I hate you, logic." She grabbed the tote bag and Nugget's carrier. Ronan grabbed the sword. He didn't bother with a shirt. His was destroyed anyway. He grabbed the motel bedspread, wrapping it around his shoulders like a cape. "Bathroom window," he ordered. He slid the small frosted window open. It was a tight squeeze. Ronan went first, silently dropping into the muddy alley behind the motel. He reached up, taking the carrier, then helped Mina climb out. The rain was torrential. It soaked Mina's flannel shirt instantly. They sprinted toward the tree line. Behind them, they heard the door to room 4 splinter as it was kicked in. "Clear!" a voice yelled. Then, "The bed is warm! They're rabbits! Find them!" "Go," Ronan urged, pushing her toward the dense woods. They scrambled up a muddy embankment, slipping on wet leaves. Mina's lungs burned. She could hear shouting behind them, flashlights cutting through the rain. "Where are we going?" she gasped. "The train tracks," Ronan said, pointing. "I heard a whistle 10 minutes ago. It's a freight line. It slows down for the curve." They crested the hill. Below them, a long line of steel boxcars was chugging through the dark, the metal wheels screeching against the wet rails. "You want to jump a train?" Mina yelled over the noise. "Like a hobo from the 1920s? "Unless you can fly," Ronan shouted back. "Jump!" Chapter 15. The train was moving faster than it looked. Ronan ran alongside an open boxcar, his bare feet splashing in the gravel ballast. He threw the coronation sword inside. It clattered loudly, then tossed the bedspread. "Hand me the bird!" Mina passed the carrier up to him. He set it gently inside, then turned back, extending his hand. "Jump, Mina!" Mina sprinted, her legs pumping. The ground was uneven. She lunged, grabbing Ronan's hand. He pulled. It wasn't a gentle tug. It was a powerful hoist that yanked her off the ground and swung her into the dark, cavernous space of the boxcar. She landed on the wooden floor, rolling to a stop. Ronan vaulted in after her, collapsing against the wall as the train picked up speed, leaving the shouting mercenaries in the Sunrise Motel far behind. The boxcar was empty, smelling of sawdust and oil. It was dry but freezing. The wind whipped through the open door. Mina crawled over to the door and slid it shut with a heavy groan of rusted metal, plunging them into near darkness. "Safe," Ronan breathed, leaning his head back against the wall. He was shivering now. The metabolic fire had burned out, leaving him vulnerable to the cold. He was shirtless, wet, and bleeding through his bandages again. "You're freezing," Mina said. She grabbed the motel bedspread he'd thrown in. It was damp, but better than nothing. "Come here." They huddled in the corner of the car, away from the drafts. Mina wrapped the blanket around Ronan's shoulders, then hesitated. "I'm fine," Ronan said, his teeth chattering. "You're turning blue," Mina argued, "and I'm not exactly tropical." She sat down next to him, pulling the edges of the blanket around herself, too. It was a tight fit. She pressed her side against his, sharing body heat. His skin was ice cold, but as they sat there, the warmth began to build. "This is undignified for a king," Ronan muttered, though he wrapped his good arm around her waist to pull her closer. "It's adventurous," Mina countered, resting her head on his uninjured shoulder. "Besides, you said you wanted a life. This is life. Messy, cold, and smelling like wet chicken." Nugget clucked softly from his carrier, safe and dry. Ronan looked down at her. In the shadows, his eyes were soft. The arrogant mask was gone. "I am sorry about your car. And the evidence box." Mina sighed. "Dave wins this round. But Clementine is tough. She'll be there when we get back." "If we get back," Ronan corrected grimly. "When?" Mina insisted. She looked up at him. "We have 3 days until Friday. We're on a train to somewhere. We have a sword and a chicken. We're unstoppable." Ronan let out a breath of laughter, the sound vibrating against her ribs. "You are an optimist, Mina Hart." "I'm a landscape architect," she murmured, closing her eyes as the rhythmic clack-clack of the train lulled her. "I see the potential in the mess." Ronan didn't answer. He simply held her tighter, staring into the dark, realizing that for the first time in his life, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt full. Chapter 16. The freight train began to decelerate as the sky bruised purple with the approaching dawn. The rhythmic clack-clack of the wheels changed tempo, a grinding screech echoing through the metal boxcar as the brakes engaged for the curve into Silver Creek's industrial district. "We have to jump," Ronan said. His voice was rough, shivering slightly. Mina looked at him. In the gray morning light, the king of the Silver Claw pack looked like a tragic, beautiful wreck. He was shirtless, his torso wrapped in the stolen, floral-patterned motel bedspread, which was now stained with soot and mud. His black tuxedo pants were torn at the knee, and his left shoulder was stiff, the stitches holding the angry red gash together. "You can barely stand," Mina argued, clutching the tote bag and Nugget's carrier to her chest. "If you jump, you'll tear the stitches." "If we ride this into the depot, the iron guard will be waiting with silver cuffs," Ronan countered. He moved to the open door, the bedspread tucked tightly into his waistband to keep his legs free for the impact, the fabric fluttering behind him like a moth-eaten royal cape. "Trust me, I know how to fall." He didn't wait for her permission. He grabbed the coronation sword, which looked absurdly large next to the bedspread, and tossed it into a patch of tall, frost-covered grass beside the tracks. Then he turned to Mina. "On 3. 1, 2... He grabbed her waist and jumped on 2. Mina screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the wind. They hit the embankment together. Ronan took the brunt of the impact, twisting his body in midair to land on his uninjured side, rolling them through the wet grass and gravel. They came to a stop at the bottom of a ditch. The world spun. Mina lay on top of him, breathless. "You said 3, she wheezed. "I lied," Ronan groaned, staring up at the sky. "You would have hesitated." He sat up, wincing as he reached for the sword lying a few feet away. He used it like a cane to push himself upright. "We need cover, and a phone." They found shelter under a concrete overpass near a dormant textile factory. It smelled of wet concrete and oil. Ronan pulled the cheap flip phone from his pocket. His hands were shaking from the cold. Hypothermia was creeping back in now that the metabolic fever had burned out. He dialed. "Keon," he rasped when the line clicked open. "North District, under the I-95 overpass. Bring clothes and a vehicle that isn't traceable." "Ronan?" Keon's voice was frantic. "The news is reporting you were spotted 200 miles away at a motel. How did you—" "Train," Ronan cut him off. 20 minutes. If you are late, I will freeze to death, and you will have to explain to the council why their king died wearing a floral polyester blanket." He hung up and slid down the concrete wall, pulling Mina close. She didn't resist. She huddled into his side, sharing what little warmth they had left. "You look ridiculous," she whispered, her teeth chattering. "I am setting a new trend," Ronan murmured, resting his chin on the top of her head. "Royal hobo chic." Exactly 19 minutes later, a rusted white van with "Joe's Plumbing" painted on the side rolled to a stop near the overpass. The back doors flew open. Beta Keon, looking exhausted and wearing a hoodie, jumped out. He took one look at Ronan, bloodied, dirty, and draped in flowers, and blinked. "Your Majesty," Keon said, his voice trembling between relief and hysteria. "You look vivid." "Drive the van, Keon," Ronan ordered, limping toward him, "before I demote you to Omega." Chapter 17. Keon's safe house was a sterile, modern apartment in the city center, registered under a shell corporation. It had heated floors, which Mina decided was the greatest invention in human history. After a scalding shower and a meal of actual food, takeout pad thai, the mood shifted from survival to strategy. The three of them stood in the bathroom. Ronan sat on the closed toilet lid, a towel draped around his shoulders. He looked cleaner, but the exhaustion was etched deep into the lines of his face. "You cannot walk into the gala looking like Ronan Vesper," Keon said, leaning against the doorframe. "Half the guard is loyal to Cassius. If they recognize you before you reach the podium, they will shoot you and claim you attacked them." "I need a disguise," Ronan agreed, looking in the mirror. He ran a hand over the scruff on his jaw. "Shave the beard. Cut the hair." "I can do it," Mina said, stepping forward. She held the pair of scissors Keon had found in a drawer. "I'm an artist. It's just sculpting with keratin." Ronan looked at her in the mirror. The amber fire in his eyes softened. "Do not cut my ears off, Mina." "No promises." The room fell silent save for the snip-snip of the scissors. Mina worked with focused intensity. She trimmed his hair shorter on the sides, fading it in a way that changed the silhouette of his face, making him look more severe, more military. Then came the shave. Keon stepped out to check the perimeter, leaving them alone in the small, steam-filled room. Mina applied the shaving cream. The scent of sandalwood and steam filled the air. She picked up the razor. "Tilt your head back." Ronan obeyed, exposing his throat. It was an act of supreme trust, an alpha barring his jugular to another. Mina's hand trembled slightly as she dragged the razor down his neck. "Steady," Ronan murmured. The vibration of his voice traveled through the razor handle into her fingers. "You have a lot of trust in a woman who crashed your wedding 3 days ago," Mina whispered, wiping the blade. "I trust my instincts," Ronan said, his eyes closed. "The ache, the hollow place in my chest, it is gone when you are near. My wolf knows you are safe, even if you are chaotic." Mina paused, the razor hovering over his jawline. She looked at his face, the sharp cheekbones, the scar through his eyebrow, the vulnerability he only showed her. Her heart did a traitorous flip. "There," she said softly, wiping the last bit of foam away with a hot towel. "You look different, dangerous." Ronan opened his eyes. He looked at his reflection, then at her. He reached out, his thumb brushing a stray curl of hair from her forehead. "We need a cover," Keon said, walking back in, breaking the moment. He held up a garment bag. "I pulled some strings. Mina, you are going as Countess Valda of the Eastern Steppes. She's a recluse, very wealthy, very eccentric. No one has seen her in years. And me? Ronan asked, standing up. Keon tossed him a pair of dark sunglasses, a fitted black turtleneck, and a small, medicinal-smelling tin. Scent blocker, Keon grunted. Rub it on your pulse points. It stings, but it'll mask the alpha pheromones. You are her bodyguard, silent, lethal, and most importantly, invisible. Ronan caught the glasses. I can be silent. Mina snorted. Since when? For the crown, Ronan said, putting on the glasses. He crossed his arms, his posture shifting instantly from regal king to menacing wall of muscle. I can be whatever you need me to be. Chapter 18. The Winter Solstice Gala was the most prestigious event in the werewolf calendar. The grand hall was illuminated by thousands of floating candles, the air thick with the scent of pine, expensive perfume, and power. Outside, a line of limousines idled. Remember the plan, Keon said from the driver's seat of the rented black sedan. I have smuggled the coronation sword inside through the catering entrance. It is taped under the table at the back of the dais. You get in, you blend, and when the council calls the vote at midnight, you strike. Got it, Mina breathed. She smoothed the skirt of her dress. It was a gown Keon had acquired, a deep velvet midnight blue that hugged her curves and flared at the bottom. It was dramatic, regal, and completely unlike anything she owned. She wore a heavy veil fascinated with silver crystals that obscured the upper half of her face. Nugget? She asked. Secure, Ronan rumbled from beside her. He pointed to the oversized, rigid clutch purse Mina held. It had discreet air holes drilled into the side. Inside, Nugget was happily pecking at a stash of dried corn. Okay, Mina exhaled. Showtime. The car stopped. The valet opened the door. Mina stepped out onto the red carpet. Camera flashes erupted like lightning. She lifted her chin, channeling every ounce of Countess Valda energy she could muster. She didn't smile. She looked bored. Ronan stepped out behind her. He was unrecognizable. The haircut, the shave, and the dark glasses transformed him. He wore a simple black suit, tight across the shoulders, with a communication earpiece, fake, coiled behind his ear. He didn't look at the cameras. He scanned the crowd, his body a coiled spring. They walked toward the entrance. Two massive iron guards stood at the checkpoint, checking invitations and scanning for weapons. Invitation, the guard grunted. Mina handed over the thick, cream-colored envelope Keon had forged. Countess Valda, and security detail. The guard scanned the invite. It flashed green. Then he looked at Ronan. He needs to be patted down. Mina's heart hammered. Ronan was weaponless. Keon had taken the sword. But his aura, an Alpha King's aura, was hard to hide. The guard ran a wand over Ronan's chest. It beeped at his belt buckle. Belt, Ronan said. His voice was a guttural growl, pitched lower than usual, stripped of his royal cadence. The guard frowned, leaning in. He sniffed. He smells antiseptic, the guard muttered, sniffing closer. And like cheap lye soap. Can't smell a lick of his scent through the chemicals. Scent blocker, Mina thought, remembering the pungent, stinging rub Keon had insisted Ronan apply to his neck and wrists. Thank God for Crimson Shield tradecraft. Clear, the guard grunted, stepping aside. They walked through the heavy doors and into the cacophony of the grand hall. The noise hit them instantly. Clinking glasses, a string quartet playing a waltz, the low murmur of hundreds of wolves. Ronan leaned in close to her ear, looking like a dutiful bodyguard receiving instructions. Do not look at the dais, he whispered, his breath hot against her neck. Cassius is there, watching. Mina fought the urge to look. I see him in my peripheral. He looks smug. He thinks he has won, Ronan murmured, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, a touch that branded her through the velvet. Walk to the bar, demand a drink, be difficult. We need to wait for the signal. Mina nodded, gripping her clutch and the chicken inside tighter. I can do difficult. She swept into the crowd, the bodyguard shadowing her every step, 2 imposters walking straight into the heart of the enemy's den. Chapter 19. The air in the grand hall was stifling. A cocktail of expensive champagne, roasted duck, and the sharp, metallic scent of nervous werewolves. Mina Hart, currently posing as the reclusive Countess Valda, moved through the crowd with rigid determination. Her midnight blue velvet gown swished heavily around her ankles, the silver crystal veil obscuring her vision just enough to make the candlelight blur into streaks of gold. "Target is 30 feet ahead," Ronan whispered. His voice, stripped of its royal cadence and pitched into a flat bodyguard growl, vibrated through the fake earpiece coil against her neck. "Do not engage, just walk." Mina gripped her rigid clutch purse so hard her knuckles turned white. Inside, she felt the rhythmic thump-thump of Nugget pecking at a kernel of dried corn. "I'm walking," she hissed under her breath. "But Lady Seraphina is staring at me like I'm a chew toy." The jilted bride was holding court near the chocolate fountain. She wore a dress made of silver scales that looked sharp enough to draw blood. As Mina passed, Seraphina's head snapped up, her nostrils flared. Ronan stiffened beside Mina, his hand, resting on the small of her back to guide her, tensed. "Keep moving." They almost made it. They were 10 feet from the dais where the council sat, looking like vultures in tuxedos. "Stop!" Seraphina's voice rang out, shrill and commanding. The string quartet faltered, the chatter died down. Seraphina stepped into their path, blocking the aisle. She ignored the towering bodyguard, but as a former prospective queen, her nose was trained for the specific nuances of royal blood. She leaned in, sniffing the air as the scent blocker began to fail under the heat of the ballroom. "Raspberries," Seraphina sneered, her eyes narrowing. "And cedar. You tried to mask it with perfume, you little rat, but I would know that scent anywhere." Mina froze. "I beg your pardon?" she tried to say in a posh accent, but it came out as a squeak. "You aren't Countess Valda," Seraphina shouted, turning to the high elder on the dais. "It's her, the wedding crasher, the human who stole the king!" Chaos erupted. The iron guards stationed at the perimeter drew their stun batons. "Take her!" Seraphina shrieked, lunging for Mina's veil. She ripped the silver crystal fabric away. Mina stood exposed, her hazel eyes wide, her curly chestnut hair frizzed from the humidity. "Run," Ronan said. He didn't wait for Seraphina to react. He shoved the jilted bride, gently, but with enough force to send her stumbling into a waiter carrying a tray of champagne flutes. Crash. "Get to the dais!" Ronan roared, dropping the bodyguard act. He grabbed Mina's arm and plowed through the crowd. He didn't draw a weapon. He was the weapon. He used his shoulders to knock aside a guard who tried to intercept them. "The table!" he shouted to Mina as they reached the platform. "Get under the table!" Mina didn't argue. She dove under the long table draped in white linen where the council sat. "He's here!" Cassius screamed, standing up and knocking over his chair. "Kill the imposter!" Ronan stood before the dais, the dark sunglasses sliding down his nose. He ripped them off and crushed them in his hand. He looked at the council, his amber eyes burning with a king's fury. "I am no imposter!" he bellowed, his voice shaking the crystal chandeliers. "And I am taking my seat." Chapter 20. The grand hall was a cacophony of screams and shattered glass. Mina was on her hands and knees under the table, surrounded by the polished shoes of the council members who were scrambling away. She saw it, taped to the underside of the heavy oak table with layers of gray duct tape. The coronation sword. "I found it!" she yelled, her voice muffled by the tablecloth. She clawed at the tape. It was industrial strength. "Come on, come on!" She used her nails, tearing at the adhesive until the heavy steel hilt came loose. It dropped into her hand with a heavy clank. She scrambled out from under the tablecloth, dragging the massive sword. It was nearly as tall as she was. "Ronan!" she screamed, sliding the weapon across the polished floor. Ronan, who was currently holding an iron guard in a headlock, turned. He caught the sliding sword by the hilt, the leather grip slapping into his palm with a sound like a thunderclap. The transformation was instant. The bodyguard vanished. The king returned. He swung the blade in a wide arc, the steel singing through the air. The guards backed away, terrified. No wolf dared to attack a king holding the ancestral blade. It was a death sentence by pack law. Ronan stood alone in the center of the dais, chest heaving. His black tactical jacket was torn at the shoulder, revealing the white bandage underneath. But he didn't look injured. He looked lethal. "I demand the vote!" Ronan shouted, pointing the sword at High Elder Cassius. "I am here, I am sane, and I am armed. By the laws of the Silver Claw Pack, you must count the stones." The crowd fell silent. The stones were the voting tokens used to confirm a king. Cassius smoothed his velvet robes. He didn't look frightened. He looked bored. "A stirring performance, Your Majesty," Cassius drawled, though his eyes flickered to the crowd, sensing their desperate hope in the ancient law he knew was a fabrication. He couldn't call the bluff without inciting a riot. "Truly, you almost had me convinced." "Count the votes, Cassius," Ronan growled, taking a step forward, "or I will remove your head and count the rings in your neck." "Violent," Cassius tutted. "Unstable. Exactly as I predicted." He pressed a button on the podium. A massive screen behind the dais, usually used for displaying the pack crest, flickered to life. "I anticipated you might try something dramatic," Cassius said, his voice amplified by the speakers. "So I prepared a counter-argument." The screen resolved into a grainy, live video feed. Mina gasped, dropping her clutch purse. It was a room. A small, familiar room with floral wallpaper. Tied to a chair in the center, looking furious and terrified, was an elderly woman with silver curls. A mercenary in a black mask stood behind her, a pistol pressed to her temple. "Grandma!" Mina screamed, the sound tearing from her throat. "Nana Rose," Cassius corrected. "She is quite comfortable. For now. But my associate has strict instructions. If I do not check in every 5 minutes, well, accidents happen." Ronan froze. The sword, which had been raised to strike, lowered an inch. "You monster," Ronan whispered. "I am a pragmatist," Cassius smiled, thin and cruel. "Drop the sword, Ronan. Surrender the crown, or the human dies." Chapter 21. The silence in the hall was visceral. Every eye was on the king. Mina stared at the screen, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Her grandmother looked so small in that chair. Nana Rose was 70 years old. She made blueberry jam and knitted socks. She didn't belong in this world of teeth and claws. "Ronan," Mina choked out, tears blurring her vision. "Don't! You can't!" She didn't know what she was asking. She couldn't ask him to give up his kingdom, but she couldn't watch her grandmother die. Ronan looked at the screen. Then he looked at Mina. The amber fire in his eyes died down, replaced by a profound, devastating sadness. He looked at her not as a king looks at a subject, but as a man looks at the only thing that tethers him to the earth. "I swore an oath," Ronan said softly, his voice carrying in the silent room, "to protect the pack. And you are my pack now, Mina." He turned to Cassius. "Let her go," Ronan said. "Drop the sword first," Cassius commanded. Ronan didn't hesitate. He opened his hand. The coronation sword, the blade that had crowned kings for 500 years, hit the floor with a deafening, dissonant clang. It skittered across the wood, coming to rest at Cassius's feet. "Arrest him," Cassius ordered. The iron guards swarmed. They didn't use normal handcuffs. They brought out the silver cuffs, heavy, etched shackles that glowed with a dull, matte finish. They slammed the metal onto Ronan's wrists. Hiss! The sound of burning flesh was audible. Ronan's knees buckled, a guttural groan escaping his clenched teeth as the silver burned into his skin, cutting off his connection to his wolf, neutralizing his strength. Smoke curled up from his wrists. "No!" Mina screamed. She tried to run to him, but two guards grabbed her arms. "Don't touch him!" she yelled, kicking and struggling. "You're hurting him!" Ronan looked up, sweat beading on his forehead from the agony. "Mina," he rasped. "Stay quiet. Survive." "Take them to the dungeons," Cassius said, picking up the sword. He gestured with the blade toward the floor. "And bring the girls' trinkets. We'll use the bird inside to make the king sign the abdication." A guard scooped up Mina's dropped clutch purse and shoved her roughly toward the stairs. "You promised!" Mina shrieked as they dragged her backward. "You promised you'd let her go!" "I lied," Cassius said simply. "Politics, my dear. It's a dirty business." Mina lunged, biting the hand of the guard holding her. He cursed and backhanded her, a sharp blow that sent her reeling into darkness. The last thing she saw was Ronan struggling against 4 guards, his eyes burning with a helpless, terrifying rage. Chapter 22. The cell was cold. Not the crisp cold of the winter air, but the damp, rot-filled cold of a grave. Mina sat on the stone floor, hugging her knees. Her cheek throbbed where the guard had hit her. She had managed, miraculously, to keep her clutch purse. The guards had tossed her into the cell like a sack of garbage, not bothering to search a harmless human for a chicken. Nugget was huddled in her lap, shivering. Even the birds seemed to understand that hope had left the building. To her right, a solid stone wall separated her from the next cell. "Ronan?" she whispered. Her voice was barely a croak. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, a shifting of chains. "I am here." His voice was rough, strained. She could hear the pain in it. The silver cuffs were still on him. She knew they were slowly poisoning his blood, keeping his healing factor from working. "I'm sorry," Mina sobbed, the tears finally spilling over. "I'm so sorry. You gave up everything. For me." "Do not apologize," Ronan replied through the wall. He sounded close, as if he was leaning his forehead against the cold stone on his side. "It was an easy choice." "Easy?" Mina laughed bitterly. "You lost your crown. You're going to be executed. How is that easy?" "Because," Ronan said, his voice dropping to a low, intimate rumble that vibrated through the stone. "Before I met you, the crown was just a hat I wore to hide the fact that I was hollow. I was a ghost, haunting my own castle." Mina pressed her hand against the damp wall, wishing she could reach through it. "You aren't hollow," she whispered. "I was," he insisted. But these last 3 days, chopping wood, eating stale soup, running from a truck in a broken Blue Beetle, it was the first time I felt alive. You were never the chaos, Mina. You were the peace I was looking for. Mina closed her eyes, hot tears tracking through the dust on her face. The ache in her chest, the one she had carried for so long, was throbbing, pulling toward him like a magnet. "I don't want to die," she whispered. "I have so many paintings I haven't painted. I haven't even named my favorite paintbrush." "You will not die," Ronan vowed. "I will find a way. I will tear this castle apart stone by stone if I have to." "You're cuffed," Mina reminded him gently. "Then I will use my teeth," Ronan growled. Suddenly, the heavy iron door at the end of the corridor creaked open. Heavy footsteps echoed on the stone floor. "Company," Ronan warned, the chains rattling as he stood up. Mina clutched Nugget tighter. High Elder Cassius appeared in front of her cell bars, flanked by 2 executioners holding syringes filled with a glowing blue liquid. Wolfsbane. "Time to tie up loose ends," Cassius smiled, unlocking Mina's cell. "The king needs a little motivation to sign his abdication papers, and nothing motivates a man like watching his pet die." Mina scrambled back against the wall, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The fear was absolute. It was primal. And somewhere deep inside her DNA, a dormant lock clicked open. Chapter 23. The executioner stepped forward, the needle glinting in the dim dungeon light. Inside the barrel, the blue wolfsbane swirled like liquid toxicity. "The bird first," High Elder Cassius commanded, sounding bored. "Then the girl. Make it slow. I want the king to hear every heartbeat stop." The guard reached into the cell. His heavy glove grabbed the rigid clutch purse from Mina's lap. "No!" Mina screamed, scrambling upright. She lunged, grabbing the strap. "Leave him alone!" The guard backhanded her again. Crack! Mina hit the stone wall, her vision swimming. She watched, helpless, as the guard shook the purse upside down. Nugget tumbled out, landing on the dirty stone floor. The little silky chicken fluffed his feathers, looking confused and terrified. The executioner lowered the needle toward the bird's tiny chest. "Don't!" Ronan roared from the next cell, thrashing against his chains. The silver cuffs sizzled, smoke rising from his wrists as he fought the burning restraints. "Cassius, I will end your bloodline!" Mina looked at Nugget. Then she looked at Ronan, bleeding, tortured, and desperate. Something inside her snapped. It wasn't a mental decision. It was biological. A dormant, ancient lock in her DNA, hidden by parents who had fled the pack life to raise her in the quiet safety of the human world, suddenly shattered under the pressure of pure, unadulterated rage. It started as a fire in her marrow. Mina gasped, arching her back. Her bones felt like they were vibrating. A sound tore from her throat, not a scream, but a guttural, animalistic growl that echoed off the damp walls. "What is she doing?" Cassius frowned, stepping back. "Mina?" Ronan's voice was filled with sudden, acute awareness. He stopped struggling. He smelled it. The scent of raspberries and cedar was spiking, changing, becoming sharper, wild. Mina fell to her hands and knees. The pain was blinding. Her spine cracked audibly, reshaping itself. Her midnight blue velvet gown, already torn, strained at the seams. Rip! The expensive fabric shredded as her shoulders expanded. Her jaw popped, elongating. Her skin itched furiously as fur burst through the pores, golden brown, thick, and lustrous. "Shoot her!" Cassius screamed, his composure shattering. "She's shifting! She's a latent!" The executioner dropped the needle and reached for his sidearm. Too late. With a final, sickening crunch of bone, the woman vanished. In her place stood a wolf. She wasn't massive like an alpha. She was sleek, compact, and built for speed, with fur the color of toasted honey and eyes that burned with hazel intelligence. The guard reached for his stun baton. Mina, Wolf Mina, didn't hesitate. She snarled, a sound of pure fury, and launched herself through the open cell door. She was a blur of golden fur and teeth. She didn't aim for the throat. She aimed for the hand holding the weapon. "Jump!" The guard screamed as her jaws clamped down. He dropped the baton. Mina landed, skidding on the stone floor. She stood over Nugget, shielding the chicken with her body, and bared her teeth at the High Elder of the Council. Chapter 24. Cassius stared at the golden wolf, his face pale. "Impossible. She's human. She's a landscape architect." Mina didn't care about his confusion. She cared about the keys dangling from the guard's belt, the guard currently whimpering on the floor, clutching his mangled hand. She lunged again, snapping at the guard's waist. He scrambled back, kicking at her, but she was faster. She clamped her teeth around the brass keyring and yanked. The leather belt loop tore. Keys in mouth, she spun around. "Mina!" Ronan shouted, pressing his face to the bars of his cell. "Here!" She scrambled over to his cell door. Her paws scrabbled on the slick stone. She wasn't used to 4 legs yet, but she managed to jam her snout between the bars. She dropped the keys. They slid across the floor, stopping inches from Ronan's boot. Ronan dropped to his knees. His hands were shaking from the nerve damage caused by the silver, but he grabbed the keys. He fumbled, trying 2 before finding the right one. Click. The silver cuffs popped open. Ronan roared. It was a sound of pure relief and returning power. He ripped the cuffs off, throwing them against the wall. The burns on his wrists were ugly, raw, and red, but without the contact, his healing factor fought through the residual silver poisoning. Fueled by the proximity of his newly awakened mate, his strength roared back with a vengeance. "Open the door," he commanded, his voice vibrating with alpha power. He unlocked the cell and stepped out. He was shirtless, his tactical pants torn, his body a map of violence. He looked at Cassius. "You have the sword," Ronan said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I have the wolf." Cassius drew the coronation sword. The blade hummed. "I have the ancient steel. You are an unarmed, exhausted boy and a puppy." "I am not unarmed," Ronan growled. He closed his eyes. The change took him less than 2 seconds. It was fluid, practiced violence. His body expanded, black fur erupting, muscles swelling. He dropped to all 4s, transforming into a massive, midnight black wolf with shoulders the size of a bull. The black alpha and the golden omega stood side by side. Mina yipped, nudging Nugget's shivering form with her nose. She grabbed the chicken gently by the scruff of his little denim vest — he went limp, playing dead — and tossed him onto her back. He buried his claws into her thick fur, holding on for dear life. The black wolf, Ronan, looked at her, then at the door. He let out a bark that clearly meant, "Move." They charged. Cassius swung the massive sword. Ronan ducked under the blade, his speed defying his size. He didn't bite Cassius. He slammed his shoulder into the elder's chest, sending the old man flying into the stone wall. The sword clattered to the floor. Mina scooped up the sword by the leather hilt. It was heavy, dragging on the ground. But she wasn't leaving it. Together, they sprinted up the spiral stone staircase. As they burst into the chaos of the hall, Keon, ever the efficient beta, instantly tossed a discarded tablecloth over Mina's golden wolf form, anticipating the moment she would eventually shift back and need cover from the prying eyes of the court. Chapter 25. The Winter Solstice Gala was in a state of confused murmur. The video feed had cut out minutes ago. The guests were whispering, eyeing the Iron Guard nervously. Suddenly, the double doors leading to the dungeons exploded outward. Wood splinters rained down on the buffet table. A massive black wolf burst into the hall, skidding on the polished floor, his claws gouging deep scratches into the parquet. Beside him, a smaller golden wolf scrambled for traction, a white chicken clinging to her back. She was low to the ground, the massive broadsword clamped in her jaws, the tip of the scabbard sparking against the parquet floor as she hauled the heavy steel toward the dais. "It's the king!" someone screamed. "He's shifted!" The Iron Guard moved to intercept. "Stop them!" But before they could engage, the main entrance doors of the gala blasted open. "For the king!" Beta Kion stood there, flanked by 50 wolves in dark red tactical gear, the Crimson Shield. The border loyalists had arrived. "Secure the room!" Kion yelled, shifting into a russet-colored wolf. The ballroom descended into absolute chaos. It wasn't a massacre. It was a dominance brawl. Wolves shifted left and right. Tables were overturned. The chocolate fountain was a casualty of war, spraying fondue over a screaming duchess. Ronan barreled through the center, heading for the dais. An Iron Guard lunged at him. Ronan snapped his jaws, catching the wolf by the scruff and tossing him aside like a rag doll. He wasn't killing them. They were his subjects, just misguided. But he was making it clear who was alpha. Mina stuck to the periphery, weaving under tables. The sword in her mouth was heavy, tasting of leather and old steel. She needed to get it to Ronan. She saw Serafina. The jilted bride was standing on a chair, holding a silver steak knife, looking deranged. "You ruined my wedding!" Serafina shrieked, jumping down to intercept Mina. Mina didn't have time for this. She braked hard. Nugget, sensing the momentum, let go. The chicken flew through the air like a feathery projectile and landed directly on Serafina's face. "Get it off! Get it off!" Serafina flailed, dropping the knife as Nugget pecked furiously at her diamond earrings. Mina barked a laugh, a weird, yipping sound, and sprinted past her. She reached Ronan, who was cornered by 3 heavyweights near the dais. With a powerful toss of her head, she sent the heavy steel skidding across the polished wood, the metal screaming against the floor until it reached his feet. Ronan shifted back to human form in mid-stride, a risky, high-level maneuver. He caught the sword, the hilt slamming into his hand. He was naked, covered in dust and blood, but he looked like a god of war. He raised the blade. The steel caught the light of the chandeliers. "Enough!" he roared. The alpha voice hit the room like a physical shockwave. Every wolf froze. The instinct to obey the king holding the ancestral blade was overwhelming. The fighting stopped. The Crimson Shield had the Iron Guard pinned. Kion was standing over the captain of the guard, growling low. Ronan stood panting, the sword lowered. He looked around the room, his eyes wild. "Cassius is in the dungeon," he rasped, his voice raw. "Arrest him. And someone, get me a pair of pants." Chapter 26. The infirmary smelled of antiseptic, sage, and crushed lavender. It was quiet, a stark contrast to the cacophony of the gala an hour ago. Mina sat on the edge of a white examination bed. She was human again, though she was currently wrapped in a hospital gown that was 3 sizes too big. Her body ached in places she didn't know existed. Shifting for the first time was like running a marathon while being beaten with a bat. "Drink this," an elderly healer said, handing her a ceramic cup. "Willow bark and protein slurry. It tastes like mud, but it will knit your bones." Mina drank it. It did taste like mud. On the bed next to her, Ronan lay propped up against pillows. He was wearing scrub pants, finally, and his chest was wrapped in fresh bandages. His wrists were treated with a thick green poultice to draw out the silver poisoning. "Nana Rose?" Mina asked, her voice raspy. "Safe," Ronan said immediately. "Keon sent a team to the location we traced from the video feed. The mercenary surrendered immediately. She is currently at the safe house complaining about the lack of herbal tea." Mina exhaled, her shoulders slumping. "Thank God." She looked down at her hands. They were trembling. "I turned into a wolf, Ronan. I ate a guy's belt loop." "You were magnificent," Ronan said softly. He reached out with his bandaged hand. "You saved my life. Again." "I broke the expensive dress," she murmured, tears pricking her eyes. "And I think Nugget has PTSD. He's been staring at the wall for 20 minutes. Nugget was actually asleep in his carrier on the nightstand, exhausted from his battle with Serafina. Ronan smiled. It wasn't the arrogant smirk of the king or the polite smile of the politician. It was genuine. "Mina," he said, "come here." She slid off her bed and walked to his. He scooted over, making room. She hesitated, then climbed in beside him, careful of his injuries. He wrapped his good arm around her, pulling her flush against his side. The contact was electric. The missing rib sensation, that hollow ache, was completely gone. In its place was a warm, humming sense of rightness. "The compatibility trial," Ronan whispered into her hair. "I believe we have sufficient data." "Day 3, Mina noted, resting her head on his shoulder. "We have 27 days left." "I don't need them," Ronan said. He tilted her chin up. His amber eyes searched hers. "I know. Do you?" Mina looked at him. The king who chopped wood in a tuxedo. The man who jumped on a moving truck for her chicken. "Yeah," she whispered. "I know." He kissed her. It wasn't frantic or desperate like their escape. It was slow, deep, and tasting of promise. It was a seal on a contract written in blood and chaotic road trips. "Finally," Ronan breathed against her lips. "Don't start," Mina laughed, burying her face in his neck. "Just go to sleep, Your Majesty. We have a kingdom to fix in the morning." "And a car to retrieve," Ronan added sleepily. "I miss the Blue Beetle." "Me too," Mina agreed, closing her eyes. "Me too." Chapter 27. The walk from the royal infirmary to the king's private suite was a slow, quiet procession. The corridors of the pack hall, usually bustling with courtiers and diplomats, were silent. The Crimson Shield guards stood at attention as Ronan passed, their heads bowed low in genuine reverence, not for the crown, but for the alpha who had bled to protect them. Ronan didn't lean on Mina, though his gait was stiff. He walked with his hand resting possessively on the nape of her neck, his thumb tracing the sensitive skin there, grounding himself. They reached the double doors of the royal suite. Ronan pushed them open with his good shoulder. The room was vast, dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the moonlit forest. It was stark, decorated in shades of slate and charcoal, a masculine, lonely space that looked like it hadn't seen a genuine smile in a decade. "It's very gray," Mina whispered, stepping inside. Her oversized hospital gown swished around her ankles. "It needs color," Ronan murmured, closing the door and locking it. The click of the lock echoed like a gunshot, sealing the rest of the world away. "It needs orange paint, and chicken feathers, and you." He turned to her. The adrenaline of the battle had faded, leaving behind a raw, vibrating tension that was far more dangerous. His amber eyes were dark, the pupils blown wide. He looked at her not as a king looks at a subject, but as a starving man looks at a feast. "Mina," he rasped. "Ronan," she breathed. He crossed the distance between them in 2 long strides. He didn't grab her. He stopped inches away, respecting her fragility after the shift. He reached out, his bandaged hand hovering over her cheek. "Are you in pain?" he asked, his voice rough with concern. "Everywhere," Mina admitted. "My bones feel like they've been rearranged by a toddler." "Then I will be gentle," Ronan vowed. He leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't the desperate, frantic kiss of the infirmary. It was slow, deliberate, a tasting. He kissed the corner of her mouth, her jawline, the pulse points fluttering wildly in her throat. Mina sighed, her hands tangling in the waistband of his scrub pants, pulling him closer. The contact sparked that familiar heat, the missing rib sensation. But now it was a roaring fire. The hollow ache in her chest that had plagued her for years, finally, blissfully, snapped shut. "I thought I was broken," she whispered against his lips. "I thought I was too chaotic for anyone to keep." "You are not broken," Ronan growled, lifting her effortlessly into his arms. He carried her to the massive bed, settling her against the silk sheets. "You are the storm that cleared the air. You are the only thing in this castle that is real." He followed her down, covering her body with his. He was careful of his own stitched shoulder and her sore muscles, distributing his weight on his elbows. He peeled the hospital gown away from her shoulder, pressing a kiss to the skin marked by her first shift. "Mine," he murmured into her skin. "Mated." "Fake law," Mina teased weakly, arching into his touch. "Real law," Ronan corrected. He looked down at her, his expression open and devastatingly vulnerable. "I love you, Mina. I love your chaos. I love your bravery. I love that you drive a car that smells like crayons and courage." Mina's heart stuttered. "I love you too," she whispered, "even if you are a terrible fire builder." The humor faded as his mouth found hers again. The rest of the night wasn't about politics or wars. It was an act of worship. It was the king of the wolves laying down his crown and surrendering to the landscape architect who had stolen his heart with a chaotic interruption and a silky chicken. Chapter 28, 6 months later. The morning sun hit the eastern tower of the Silver Claw Castle, illuminating a massive, vibrant splash of color against the ancient gray stone. Mina stood on scaffolding 40 feet in the air, a paintbrush clamped between her teeth. She was covered in phthalocyanine blue and cadmium yellow. The mural, a sprawling, whimsical depiction of a golden wolf and a black wolf running through a forest of pine and raspberries, was nearly complete. "You missed a spot," a deep voice called from below. Mina looked down. King Ronan stood on the balcony holding 2 travel mugs of coffee. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He was wearing jeans and a black t-shirt that stretched across his chest, looking relaxed, healthy, and infuriatingly handsome. "I'm an artist. I don't miss spots," Mina called back, taking the brush out of her mouth. "I make aesthetic choices." "Come down," Ronan ordered, though his tone was fond. "We have a schedule." Mina wiped her hands on her overalls and climbed down the ladder. As soon as her feet hit the stone, Ronan was there, pulling her into a hug that lifted her off the ground. He buried his face in her neck, inhaling the scent of paint and raspberries. "You smell like turpentine," he noted. "You love it," she grinned, kissing his jaw. "I do," he admitted. But we have to go. The car is ready. They walked hand in hand down to the royal garage. It was filled with sleek, armored black SUVs and limousines. But in the center, gleaming under the fluorescent lights, sat the guest of honor, Clementine. The 1974 Volkswagen Beetle had been fully restored. The rust was gone, replaced by a fresh coat of pristine light blue paint. The rear bumper, once crushed by a mercenary truck, was shiny chrome. The shattered rear window had been replaced with reinforced glass, and the water-damaged seats had been swapped for fresh leather that still held that intoxicating new car scent. But the passenger door still had a piece of tape on it that read, "Kick twice." "You didn't fix the door?" Mina asked, running her hand over the hood. "I wanted to keep her personality," Ronan smirked. He opened the driver's side door for her. In the back seat, sitting in a brand-new, velvet-lined travel carrier, was Nugget. The chicken was wearing a tiny, custom-made tuxedo vest and a bow tie. He clucked happily as Mina slid into the driver's seat. Ronan folded his massive frame into the passenger seat. He groaned as his knees hit the dashboard, just like the first time. "We really need a bigger car," he grumbled, buckling his seatbelt. "Never," Mina said, turning the key. The engine roared to life, not with a rattle, but with a healthy, throaty purr. Ronan had clearly upgraded the engine. "Are you ready?" Mina asked, gripping the wheel. "The council is gathered in the Great Hall." Ronan checked his watch. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. My mother is crying." High Elder Cassius is being forced to watch the empty hall on a security monitor from his damp cell. A final reminder of the power he failed to steal. "Everyone is waiting for the royal wedding of the century," Mina grinned, "and the groom is missing." "The groom is exactly where he wants to be," Ronan corrected, resting his hand on her knee. "Running away with the bride." They weren't doing the pomp and circumstance. They weren't doing the televised vows or the political alliances. They had done the hard part, the fighting, the bleeding, the surviving. Today was just for them. A drive to the coast, a private exchange of vows on a cliffside, and burgers at a roadside diner. Mina shifted Clementine into gear. "Let's give them a show," she said. She slammed on the gas. The little blue Beetle peeled out of the royal garage, screeching past the confused guards at the gate. As they hit the open road, the wind whipping through the open windows, Ronan leaned back against the headrest. He looked at the woman driving like a maniac. He looked at the chicken in the back seat. He looked at the open road ahead, free of expectations, free of loneliness. He let out a long, contented breath, the hollow ache in his chest a distant memory. "Finally," the king whispered, and this time he meant it. Forever. The end. Quick favor, don't go anywhere just yet. If you thought Mina Hart was brave for crashing a royal wedding with nothing but a cardboard box and a judgment-filled silky chicken, wait until you meet the heroine in this next story on your screen. If you loved the Alpha King's surrender to chaos, you have to hear this next disaster unfold. Click the video on your screen right now. It is absolutely unhinged, and trust me, you are not prepared for the Alpha in this one.